What's going on, boys? It is day number 10 for the book of Job. We're going to be looking at the second half of Job's response to his friend Bildad. It's going to be a pretty short word for today. I only have three areas highlighted for today that I want to cover. So we're going to be looking at, first, I just want to start off with verse 2, where Job kind of says something I think all of us would like to say, towards God sometimes, is he says, I say to God, do not declare me guilty, but tell me what charges you have against me. And, for him, it's like, again, we know why God has done this, why God has stripped everything away from him, to prove that he is a true servant, and not just as someone who worships just because he's rich. Now, I want to kind of take a second to really just put that in perspective of today, where a lot of us will, often say, well, I'm not guilty. I didn't do anything wrong. Tell me what I did wrong. Well, it's not a matter of, what you did wrong. It's a matter of what you didn't do. Or another way is a matter of what you could have done right, or what you, should have done. And it's a tough kind of, excuse me. It's a tough kind of situation that he, is going through to really kind of make that statement, saying, look, if I'm not guilty, don't declare me guilty without telling me what I did wrong. Like, you've taken all this stuff away from me, but you haven't told me why. Like, I need a reason. Like you don't just take away stuff from someone for no reason. Like, that's not logical. So, we just get another kind of emotional response from Job. Said, like, look, like, I completely understand if I'm guilty here, but like, there's nothing that's been said for why this has happened to me. So, like, what's going on here? Like, I'm feeling this sort of shame on myself to just sit here and beat myself up about it all the time. And he kind of says a similar note in verse 15. He says, if I am guilty, woe to me. Even if I am innocent, I cannot lift my head, for I am full of shame and drowned by my affliction. So he's like, look, he's like, if I'm guilty, fine, that's great. I will not try to defend myself. But if I'm innocent, even if I am innocent, like, what am I supposed to do with all the shame that has been poured upon myself, that I have poured on my, own self? Because I can't compare against God. I can't try and, speak my words against God and think that they're actually going to do something. Like, I can't do anything. I don't know, if I did anything right. I don't know if I did anything wrong. He's like, I'm not hearing what God is saying to me. Like, I need some sort of, visual representation to show that, what I'm doing is right. And, me sitting here laying out my thoughts is working, because, obviously most of them, we all know that, God wants us to lay out our thoughts to him. But it's a matter of, we question ourselves, well, is God hearing that? Because they're like, well, if he's hearing that, shouldn't he be responding in the way that we want him to? It's like, well, he's hearing you, but he's not responding in the way you want him to respond, because that's not how, he functions. That's not the type of character that he is. He is a all-good and holy God, and he has his own plan. He has his own way of going about doing things, and his way is the right way. It's the perfect way, and it's often a way that we can't comprehend because we're not perfect. And I think that's probably why Job is, feeling this sort of, confusion here, is because he's not perfect. He's not, any way, shape, or form this man who is a know-it-all, I can do anything type thing. He's mortal, just like the rest of us. And I think that's why sometimes we don't understand what God says to us. Not in a matter of, we don't hear what he says, but we don't take it into account and actually, break it down to the point where it's like, okay, well, this is what it actually means. Some of these sometimes these metaphors and, all sorts of, rhetoric that he uses to, enhance his communication, sometimes just doesn't perceive with our minds. And sometimes that's okay, because oftentimes that gives us enough time to, evaluate them and really, try to understand, okay, well, I didn't get it the first time, maybe what am I missing? What do I need to be looking at? Because there's, a little bit here, but like, what if it has a bigger meaning? Like, what if it, you know, means more than just what it physically says? Um, and so sometimes, we have to really take into account that things aren't meant to happen right away. Things are meant to take time to help us to learn. And I think that's where Job's happening here. He's like, look, I need a response right now. Like, I need this response. Like, please tell me. Like, I need to know here. Like, I don't have anything. God, please tell me what I did wrong, because, you took all this stuff away from me. Like, I don't have anything. So he's just, again, just fighting through all sorts of emotions. And, he makes a very just kind of, unique way of finishing off his response from verses 20 through 22, kind of justifying that, the shame has really overtaken him and that he's really just run by these negative thoughts. He says, "Are not my days almost over? Turn away from me so I can have a moment's joy. Before I go to the place of no return, to the land of the gloom and utter darkness, to the land of the deepest night, of utter darkness and disorder, where even the light is like darkness." So Job's like, look, like, is my time up? It's like, because I can't figure this out. It's like, I'm ready to move on and face the punishment. I can't bear this anymore. I feel like I'm getting nowhere. Like, I can't. He's like, I can't do this. He's like, but what's interesting is the immediate thought that came to my mind was, this action, and I've said it before, of the J curve. And, in simple terms, it just means, sometimes we have to go through low points before reaching the highest. And it's this, imagine the letter J, and, you start here, and you start going down, and you get down here to the bottom, and this is where you really feel it. This is where you're feeling all the bricks being thrown at your head at like one time, like every single second of the day, just bricks, just thrown, just all day, every day. But you have to be willing, but that's where you have to be willing to fight it through it. Continue. Now you're at the bottom. Now, where do you go from here? The only way to go is up. So now you slowly go up. You start to deal with it and handle it. Next thing you know, you're standing on your feet, no problem. You're not even harmed by it anymore. Now, it's not to say that you don't ever face any challenges and you don't face any sort of, conflicts. But what it does mean is that you've grown so much, and you've grown enough of a, spiritual, knowledging mind, that you can withstand these tough scenarios, these sinful actions that you get put through by the devil, and these things that tempt you, and the things that your flesh wants to do. And but that's I know we're getting off a little off topic with from what Job is saying, but like if you let these negative thoughts rule your mind, they will lead you down a path that is very, very difficult to break out of. I myself have not really been any, I would say, so bad situations that I was just, it was almost impossible for me to get out. I could say, we all can relate to, going through, dark periods, whether it's, losing a family member, or, failing a test, or whatever. But one thing I will say to kind of finish this video off is that, one little phrase that I always remind myself of, whether I'm working out or, really, I'd like to start doing it with my school, is that it's like, instead of speaking your negative thoughts, instead of speaking, or no, it goes, if you ever feel these negative thoughts rush through your mind, don't speak them. Stop listening to yourself and start speaking to yourself. And, this phrase, came from a buddy of mine that I work out with. And, he said this to me. And, when you really hear it, you think, well, you're talking to yourself. Well, one of the things I like to do while I go for a run, and I did this yesterday and this Tuesday, is that I'll run, and, you know that over time, your body starts to stiffen up, and you start to feel sore, and your breathing gets heavier, and your mouth gets dry, and you're just like, man, like I can't. But one of the things I'll say to myself is, I will not quit. I say that to myself every time I'm sitting there running, just like, I will not quit. And I'll say it like 3 times to myself. And I tell you, man, it has helped me out tremendously. Like, I have not only, seen my pace go up, but I have also noticed that I'm not stopping. Like, yesterday I ran 4.5 miles and I didn't stop. Like, I stopped for traffic maybe like once or twice, but other than that, I didn't stop. So whatever it is that you're chasing or whatever goal you've set, you know, be willing to work at a set pace. Don't be willing to, launch like a rocket out of, the first step and then, lose all that momentum going in. Start with a good pace and then remind yourself over time that, you're working, what you're working towards. Be grateful. So, but that is the end of today's word. I hope you guys have had a great week. I hope you guys may have watched the NFL draft tonight. I watched it a little bit, so maybe watching that this weekend. But I hope whatever you're going through this week, that the Holy Spirit would be with you, and that you would just share whatever's going on with the Lord, and really just with a trusted friend or family member. And I hope to see you guys very soon. Peace out, boys.